York's classic rock, Q1043.
I want to introduce you to Mary Jane Greco of Massapequa Park. She and I met at a luncheon, an FDNY luncheon that they throw every year for women who are either married to people who are dealing with 9/11 illnesses or women who have lost their husbands to 9/11 illnesses. When I met Mary Jane, I think it was about 3 years ago, her husband Paul was dealing with 9/11 issues. Now, unfortunately, we have lost him. It was 2 years ago when we lost him. And I invited Mary Jane to come on here because, as I've said in the past, I just really hate referring to a lost firefighter as the number they were of the number that we've lost since September 11th. We're now up to 281 FDNY employees that we've lost to 9/11 illnesses, and I believe 276 FDNY'ers. But I want those who gave the ultimate sacrifice to be known as people, not as a number. So that's why Mary Jane has joined me today, and she's the mom of 3 boys. And so, Mary Jane, first of all, thank you for joining us. Tell me your love story. How did you guys meet? That's
Thank
the
you for
first
having
thing.
me. We met when we were 19 years old.
Wow.
Yep. I was working at a bank and he was one of my customers. And took him about 3 weeks to ask me out. And he asked me out, and we were together every single day since our first date. Got engaged. We started dating in February, got engaged in April. I think everybody in our families had a heart attack and got married the following June. So we were together for a lifetime, even though it was not a lifetime. We were
Right.
married for over 30 years before he died.
Wow. And when did he become an FDNY'er? What's the story there?
So we got married in 1987, and he was the second class of August of 90. He got on the job. So our first son was born, and he became a fireman. He wanted to be a fireman from the time I met him. From the first time we started dating, he had applications all over the United States. He just wanted to be a fireman, and ultimately, rather New York, but they didn't know what was going on at that time. But he did take the test, got called, and got on the job August of 90.
Did he come from a history of FDNY'ers?
He did not. My father-in-law was actually NYPD, but Paul was the first firefighter in his family.
Was he there for the 97 bombing as well?
Yeah, 93. Yes, he
Oh,
was.
93. I'm sorry.
Called, yeah, I was actually pregnant with my second son, and he called me from the building, and he was there. He was with Engine 47 at the time.
So take us through that day. What was that like for you?
In 93.
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually, I heard it on the news like everybody else. I actually saw 47 Engine on the news because it was right in front of the building. And he called me from one of the offices and said it was crazy. He's like, this was the biggest hole that he had ever seen, in a parking garage. Like, it was immense. It was crazy. And, he knew that there was casualties, and unfortunately, and they were just doing what they do as firefighters, and not thinking that this was going to be repeated at a significantly larger magnitude how many years later.
And take us back to 2001. Where was Paul? Where were you? What was going on
So
when you first
ironically,
heard?
Paul had been working at the fire academy, doing health and fitness and teaching the pro reefs all summer. And the night of September 10th was his first night back at his firehouse. And he was supposed to come home the morning of September 11th. I had gotten up, got the kids to school. He had called me. I'm a nurse, so we worked, crazy schedules around each other. And we did a lot of like afternoon dates because either he was working or I was working. So he had called me that morning early and said, you know what, I might get overtime. I was like, just come home. I haven't seen you, forget the overtime. He's like, I'm not, no firefighter turns down overtime. And I dropped the kids to school, and I remember I ran to the food store to get some things, groceries and whatnot. And when I came out, I heard it on the news, and I went, this isn't good. And I came home and turned on the news, and I did not hear from him until 3 o'clock the next morning. So
So,
he was supposed to come home that morning, but wound up going into the city and was there.
well, what was that like for you and the kids,
It
and
was
how old were
crazy.
the kids then?
The kids were little. My kids now are 33, 28, and 24. So, they were young when that happens. And, it was one of those things, do I go get the kids from school? Do I need to get the kids from school? I didn't know where he was. The crazy thing was, as a firefighter wife, and many of us did, we're watching and we're looking for our husbands on the news and, watching everything. And you've seen different guys and you're calling their wives going, I saw him. He's not in the buildings. I saw him, I saw this one or I saw that one. And that's kind of what we did. And then I heard from him late that night. He came home the next morning, walked in the door, um, started crying, which was the first time I ever seen my husband cry. Like, he was not an emotional type of, crying at the wedding or crying when the kids were born type of deal. And he was just, I've never seen him like that. And he said, I need to go take a shower. I need to lay down. He went upstairs, took a shower, laid down for 15 minutes, got back up and was like, I got to go back, and walked right back out the door again and went right back down there.
And what
And
were
then
you
he wound up, at
thinking
that
then?
point, he was in, I'm sorry.
What were you thinking then when he went right back in? What was your reaction?
I wasn't surprised. Not surprised at all. I knew that that's exactly what he would do, as well as, firemen are a different breed. They definitely are. And, I knew that that's what the majority of them would be doing. And as we saw, that's exactly what they did. Um, he was in Engine 275 at that point, and he wound up transferring down to Squad 18 because they had lost everybody that day. So once he was at Squad 18, that was, closer to the village, and they were down there all the time. And he wound up, spending the next, what was it, 8, 9 months doing the recovery efforts down there.
Did
So he
he
was
ever
down there.
mention did he ever mention to you that he felt the air was unsafe and that he was concerned about the effects?
Not until years later, honestly. He said it was like nothing. He said he would never forget the smell. He said the smell was just unbelievable. He didn't talk about it much. A couple of years later, he started saying different things here and there, but he never really talked to me, the boys, about it. Um, on the anniversaries, sometimes he would say a little something, or he would see a guy's name that they had lost, or he had taught in the academy that died at their first fire, and he would say something about them. But other than that, he really didn't talk much about it. But then, he knew he was sick, Shelley. He knew he was sick for, I think, before he admitted it to himself and to anybody else. And once he truly became, very sick, that's when he said, you know, they lied. He was very resentful for the misinformation that was given.
I'm speaking with Mary Jane Greco of Massapequa Park. She lost her husband, FDNY'er Paul, to 9/11 illnesses 2 years ago when he was 55. When did Paul first notice symptoms that he was ill? And did you realize at the time
I
as
did.
well?
I knew something was going
Because you're a
on.
nurse. Yeah.
Yeah. We were living in Brooklyn at the time. He had retired, and we were living in Brooklyn at the time. And, so of course we're doing the subways and the subway stairs and going here and there. And the kids were, out of the house. We were empty nesters at that point. Everybody was either working or in college still. So we were kind of on our own. And I noticed when we were walking, he would get out of breath. And doing the subway stairs, he was like huffing and puffing. And Paul was a marathon runner. Like, this was totally out of the norm for him. And then the coughing started. And I would say to him, something's not right. What's going on? And he would always excuse it away. Oh, I haven't ran. I haven't worked out. My back was bothering me. Oh, I'm just clearing my throat. It's fine. It's fine. And then my middle son went to Ohio State University, played hockey for them. And we were there for senior weekend, and we were in the hotel room, and he seized. And he had a massive seizure. And we wound up being in Ohio State Medical Center for a month. And he wound up intubated and got septic and was really, really sick. And they didn't know what was going on with him. And after a month, he got discharged. And he was on oxygen 24/7 from that point on. And then it just kind of really all culminated from there.
What was he diagnosed with?
So initially, he was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension, which they felt were from the chemical exposure that destroyed his lungs. They were talking about transplanting him, but unfortunately, he was also diagnosed with multiple myeloma, then went on to go into kidney failure, get diagnosed with lung cancer. He would lose the vision in his eyes. He would actually bleed into his eyes and have to go and have multiple surgeries to try and clear the blood out so it would not obstruct his vision anymore. But he had multiple issues.
When when he finally spoke about they lied to us about the air, was he angry? Was he resigned? What was
He was
his
angry. He was angry. Absolutely angry. He always blamed Christy Todd Whitman
and
and
how do you
said she knew better and she should not have done that to us.
it was a week later. A week later, I'll never forget the New York Post headline, the EPA declares the air is safe. It was one
Yeah,
week later.
yeah.
And what are your feelings about this, losing the love of your life at the age of 55?
Oh, it's. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy to have anybody go through what he went through, the way he suffered. He fought and he was never complained, was so brave about it, how he handled the whole, situation and illness and what he did. And he put in the best fight he could put in. He really did. I mean, we were in Presbyterian, New York Presbyterian Cornell was like our second home. The nurses and doctors on 4 South were just not to be believed. Um, when you have nurses' cell phone numbers, saying, call me if you need anything, and doctors' cell phone numbers that they're calling you on on almost a daily basis, checking in, what's going on, how's he doing today, give me the updates, it's incredible. And the gratitude that I have for those people will never, ever go away. But to see somebody that you love go through that, and my kids and stuff, and different now, my son is getting married next year. He's not going to have his dad there for that. Anthony actually got called up and played for the Rangers this year, and his dad wasn't there to see that.
Mm.
So it's the little things in life that's where you really truly, the day in day out, of course you miss them every day, but it's the milestones and the big things that go on that you know I think you really miss them the most.
Tell us about Paul as a husband and father.
He was incredible. He was absolutely incredible. He would do anything for his family. He was a great husband, worked like a dog. I mean, that what he did for those boys was just, anything and anything. It was, and as athletic was as Paul was. I have 3 very different sons. My oldest is extremely academic. My middle one, Anthony, is the athlete, and Nick is definitely a combination of the two. And he found the strength in each one of them and kind of pushed them in that direction, and enabled them to do whatever was going to lead them to do their best life. My oldest, my children are very successful now, and I think it's all because of my husband. Truly, just pushing them and run with this. This is your strength. This is what you go with. My oldest is an attorney. Anthony's a professional hockey player, and Nick is now looking to become a firefighter.
Okay, wait a minute. So back up here. What happened with your son and the Rangers? He plays for the Rangers?
He did, yeah. Last year, he was playing for their minor league hockey team, Hartford Wolfpack, and he actually got called up for a game and played with the Rangers for a game. So that
Wow.
was like, yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Is there anything else you want the audience to know about Paul that we haven't touched on?
Just what an incredible human being he was, and how dedicated of a firefighter he was, and how much he loved that job, and the guys that he worked with. I mean, these guys were his best friends, and will always be part of my life anyway. And just it's pretty incredible to meet somebody like that in your life, have that in your life. I
And
consider myself very lucky.
yes, and at 19, you found the love of your life.
Yeah,
A beautiful story cut way too short. I thank you so much, Mary Jane Greco, and love to the boys. And
Absolutely.
and in case you missed any part of this, you can download the iHeartRadio app, which is free. And my interviews live on under the podcast Sunstein Sessions. And I'll see you guys tomorrow morning on the Jim Kerr Rock and Roll Morning Show, Q104.3.
New York's classic rock, Q1043.